Hello, and welcome to She Leads Biotech, the podcast that celebrates women leaders in the bioscience space. I'm your host, Sharron Cox, CEO and Managing Director of CNA International, based right here in New York. And each week I'll be talking to women leaders about their work, their triumphs and challenges, providing invaluable insight into how women can unlock their superpowers and succeed on their own terms. So whether you're navigating your own career path in bioscience or you're passionate about science and innovation, I hope you're empowered and inspired by each episode. Today's guest has built her career around turning bold ideas into realities that change how we think about health and science. She spent more than 15 years working at the earliest stages of innovation, helping to transform new concepts in diagnostics, therapeutics, and data science into solutions that can truly move the needle for patients and families. She's driven by the question of what becomes inevitable, identifying those ideas that seem just ahead of their time, but that will one day become standard practice in healthcare. Whether it's advancing cancer detection, making diagnostics more accessible, or exploring the frontier of AI in drug development, her work's always about finding what matters most and bringing it forward. Her work has always been about what matters most and bringing it forward. And now she's on a new challenge, joining a team of life sciences leaders to climb Mount Kilimanjaro, raising funds for cancer research as part of the Timmerman Traverse. And for the first time, this year's team will be the majority women. So please welcome entrepreneur and life sciences leader, Theresa Tribble. Hey, Theresa, thank you for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
It's great for you to be here. Where am I speaking to you from?
I'm currently in Melrose, Mass, which is about 7 miles north of Boston.
Oh, okay. I've been to a couple of conferences in Boston, so I do know it quite well. Well, there is an exciting journey happening in your life that I really want to talk about. But before that, I want to start with your career journey. Now, you didn't study science or any of the sciences at university, yet you've made a career out of being in a science-driven environment. Tell me how that's come about.
Yeah, so I'm not the most obvious entrepreneur for life science ventures because I was an English and political science major in undergrad, and I made the switch. I was always interested in health policy. So I was primarily interested early on in aging issues. So what was going on with older people. And then that often leads to health policy. So when I was in college, I worked in the Senate Special Committee on Aging for a summer, but ultimately decided that law school wasn't for me and I needed something more creative to do with my time. And some of my friends were doing strategy consulting, but I knew that I didn't want to do something that was 1 month I'm working on cement mixers and the next is airplanes or, whatever. I focused a job search on consulting, but for, healthcare related things. And so that's how I actually ended up at Putnam Associates. And somehow I convinced them without, they preferred economic majors or biology, chemistry, et cetera. I convinced them that my ability to learn languages quickly was akin to being able to learn science quickly. And I did have a demonstrated interest in health policy, which is a huge part of drugs, devices, diagnostics, et cetera, get paid for. So it was a bit of a leap of faith on their part, but worked out great. And what I learned there was that I had a strong proclivity for learning science and enjoyed it a lot. And that has sort of set the path for my career moving forward.
Right. And what does that path look like? Because I know that you're very involved in the next thing. You seem to have a knack for seeing that. Give me some examples of things that you've been involved in through your career.
Yeah. So I went to business school after consulting and went primarily because I knew I wanted to go into earlier stage companies. And after business school, have only been in early stage companies, largely venture-backed startups. The first one I did was in the autism space, looking at multi-omics for early autism detection, where I met my mentor. you kind of came across my mentor just before that, who I worked for 6 years at that company, and really have focused on companies that are typically either have strong scientific innovation, or in the case of Everlywell, business model innovation, that are reasonably close to people. So some people like to work on science that's like you have to kind of hop, skip, and jump 10 levels to figure out like how this is ever going to affect people. For me, I like things to be a little bit nearer patient, if you will, because that's what motivates me and gets me up in the morning. But I would say the common thread between kind of the 3 or 4 most interesting and important roles that I've had and companies that I've helped build is this concept of what I'd call becoming inevitable. And only in retrospect do I realize that this is a thing. But, at Everlywell in 2016, when I met Julia, who's the founder of that company, I was like, oh, at-home diagnostics. Yeah, that's the way the world should work. I'm kind of offended it doesn't already work that way. And all of my more traditional biotech life science friends are like, well, what's the IP strategy? I was like, oh, we're going to use, existing technologies. And they're like, what? And I was like, yeah, but we have this different business model where it's physician mediated, but consumers are making their choices, and it's going to be convenient the way Amazon works. And as it turned out at the time, most healthcare was already paid for using high deductible health plan. Like more and more people have high deductible health plans. So every decision they make is like every other purchase decision they make, they actually have to pay for it out of pocket. So there's a convergence of factors that made it clear to me that like this is how the world should work. And of course, then COVID happens. And it seems probably quaint in 2025 that, as early as 10 years ago, or as recently as 10 years ago, people thought this was a crazy idea that normal people could take their own samples and get their own test results.
Yeah.
Because now it's like, well, of course, it's a foregone conclusion that people can do that. And so the next company that I was part of, I helped co-found a company called BigHat Biosciences with some very technically savvy folks that was really around using AI and ML, so, machine learning and artificial intelligence to do antibody optimization for therapeutics. But the key part differentiator was that we were like, we're building a wet lab and we're going to run our own experiments so that the models can continue to learn what their recommendations yielded. And that'll give us, sort of a flywheel effect of getting better much, much faster. And that has played out. But at the time that company was started in 2019, people would say to us, well, why do you need a lab? You should just be able to ingest this and do everything in silico. And we were like, well, here's why, X, Y, Z. And of course, that's now the entire space has moved that way, where everyone thinks they have to do experiments. Then there's Droplet, where we developed that company based on the insight that using post-surgical lymphatic fluid would give you the best sense of whether someone still has cancer in their system, because most cancer, like 90% of cancer, spreads first via the lymphatic system. But we've been using blood because that's easier. And it had the same pull on this seems like a more logical way to do this. It's going to yield better results ultimately. And we'll look back in another 5 to 10 years and be like, well, that was obvious. Like it's inevitable that we ended up here. And so those are the common themes, a common thread of opportunities that I tend to be attracted to.
Okay. And you've been involved in diagnostics, therapeutics, and even the consumer health. Where do the dots join?
Mm-hmm. I mean, the most natural place for me to be is diagnostics because I've spent the most time there. I think for BigHat, I actually met my co-founder there at a diagnostics company, Mark DePristo, who is a very well-known AI/ML scientist. And so that piece was a little bit further afield. But I think because I'm often doing things a little bit ahead of the curve, there's a little more flexibility in who can be involved, because it's all of the people who are dogmatic about how things should be done tend to be dismissive of these opportunities. And that's how I've managed to weasel my way into so many interesting things. And, in the case of BigHat, I think we realized pretty quickly, I didn't take an operating role there. It's partially because we realized pretty quickly that while the way we were approaching these problems was new, the business model was going to be the same. And so they have a fantastic chief business officer named Liz Schwartzbach, who came with a strong deal sheet from pharma and biotech. And she's done an amazing job taking this novel approach, but getting traditional bio tech type deals done for the company. And I mean, I could have learned to do that, but there are people who spend their entire career perfecting that. So I'm best used in places that are a little less traditional, where it's like you're building the first, kind of like you're building the first one for the
So
first
you're kind
time.
of like the visionary of these.
I would not call myself a visionary, because if I were a visionary, I'd come up with these ideas, which I do not do. I typically recognize somebody else's idea and say, oh, that's actually really smart. I think I want to be part of that. So,
Right.
I don't know. I guess I'm an early believer, and see the potential of other people's visions and ideas, and have the orientation to be like to move on them.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, one of the things I've heard you say before is the importance of mentors and sponsors in your career, and how they shaped your career, and that difference between what is a mentor, who is a mentor, and who is a sponsor. What's your views on that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So just to clarify the definitions that I'm using. So a mentor is someone who's providing you guidance and advice on developing your career, but a sponsor is someone who may do that, but they also advocate for you for your, professional opportunities, professional development. So a mentor is maybe just going one direction towards you, but a sponsor is someone who is not just talking to you, but talking to other people about you. I have a lot of mentors, but probably only a few sponsors. And I think the way that my career has been shaped and some of the opportunities have come my way are largely because of people talking about me in rooms that I'm not in. So I think that's made a huge difference. And I think the easiest way to get a sponsor is, some people are naturally like this. They're the types of people that are going to do this for the people that they believe in. And so as you're building relationships with mentors, I don't think it's tough for someone to be a sponsor without having some kind of personal or professional relationship with you. So they need to have seen your work and the quality of your work, because they're effectively putting themselves a little bit on the line when they are advocating for you.
Yeah, they're going out championing
this
for
is an
you.
interesting project. Oh, well, you know what?
Yeah.
Teresa could probably do that. Like that kind of thing. Or like, oh, we're looking for someone with this background, and them being like, do you know anyone? And you making the list of 3 people is meaningful, right? So people seeing your work is important for sponsorship, and maybe in a way that isn't as important for mentorship. But both are really important, and one is potentially transformative.
And how can somebody earn that? Do you think? I mean, you can't, because you never know if somebody's talking about you when you're not in the room, until somebody tells you,
Right?
we'd like to talk to you. How did you know about me? Well, I was.
Where did we hear about that? Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a lot about doing what you say you're going to do.
Yeah.
And bringing you sort of your best work to whatever that engagement is. Showing, I think, strict insight and possibilities tends to get you there faster. So if you're asked to do, I don't know, thinking like early career for, the science folks, it's like if you're asked to do a set of experiments, don't just give the results back, but give your interpretation of why it matters. Like think through what the next level person is going to. So let's say you want your boss to be your sponsor. If you can sort of not just lay things in their lap, but try to make it so that you're like, what are the like first 3 questions someone's going to ask me about this? If you can anticipate those and preemptively answer them, you're going to get there faster.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the person who's hearing it, you can almost see that kind of light bulb moment, isn't it? That it's like, oh, that's what she's talking about. I wouldn't mind telling other people about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that I think that's one way to get there. And I'd say even in organizations that I've led or people that I've managed, when I see that behavior and I see that that makes it easier for me to advocate for them as well.
Okay, all right. So you're about to embark on a new challenge. Full kudos, bow down to you for this. This is not something I could ever do. But tell me what it is you're about to embark on, and why.
Yeah, so I have joined the 2026 Timmerman Traverse to raise money for the Damon Runyon Cancer Research Foundation, and we're a team of 20 plus biotech executives who are going to climb Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania to raise over $1 million for Damon Runyon. I have 4 more months to get ready for this climb, and I'm going to need every minute. And I'm currently fundraising for that as well.
So, but you're not a mountain climber. It's not something that you've really. What do you feel you have that's given you the confidence to go ahead and do that?
So Luke Timmerman, who's a prominent biotech journalist, started these Timmerman Traverse charity climbs probably 8 years ago. And so recently I've started to see my peers doing them. And I'm like, well, that seems interesting. I wonder if I'll ever get invited to do one. And so Luke reached out over the summer, and I was like, oh, now's my chance. And because I left my most recent CEO role in May, and, deliberately took the summer off and was like, now I'm, thinking about what's next. It's a good time for me to train. I have the time to do it. I mean, yesterday I spent 6 hours hiking on a Sunday, and that was like my whole day, because then it was also 3 hours in the car. So it was a full day.
Right.
Of work. So I have time to do it right now. I have always enjoyed hiking. I really like being in the woods.
Right.
And I like camping. My family and I camp together. So those are all things that I enjoy. I've never actually tried to summit what anyone would consider, a real mountain, like something that mountaineering people do. I mean, in New England, we have lots of mountains, but the one I did yesterday is not even 4,000 feet, and Kilimanjaro is at 19,500 feet.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
What do you see? Because you're obviously fit.
Oh, Sharron, I love you. I explained to the person that is organizing this climb, I was like, I have been pretty sedentary for a while. I think being a CEO has its challenges in that respect, but I am committed to, so part of the reason I did the climb was because I also wanted to really focus on building long-term habits around fitness. It's kind of like I'm right at the midpoint of life, assuming I'm going to live as long as as long as my grandparents have. And so there's no time like the present to really try to make a change. I think the motivation of knowing that I'm doing this with a team, but also raising money for an organization that sponsors early career scientists who are doing very, bold cancer research, is like, okay, well, now I've made a commitment. I have to do this for these people. I'm not going to let them down. So I could let myself down, but I will not let them down. And I think it's been really motivating.
So what has your training program been looking like?
The guide for our trip is also helping with this, but I asked my friend ChatGPT to put together a training program for a woman of my age who is not particularly physically fit. And if you've heard of, created a day-by-day program.
Right. Wow.
It's right here, actually.
Here's one I made earlier.
And I check it off. And it's, so it's personalized to me, but also it's pretty reasonable. It's one really long hike a week for the sort of the beginning, and increasing levels of weight because you have to carry a pack when you're on the mountain, and then kind of ending in January with back-to-back days of like 6+ hour hikes, which is going to be very intense. And then there's a lot of adrenaline that comes from sort of being in the moment. So it's kind of like a marathon or something where you don't train all the way to the end. It's like, it'll carry you through.
That gets you over the finish line, is the pure adrenaline.
So yeah, right now I'm doing walking, I'm doing strength training and hiking, one long hike a week.
What do you think is going to be the big challenge of it, the biggest part of it?
I've heard there's no oxygen up there. So for me, the potential for altitude sickness is the thing that gave me the most pause about doing the climb. But I got comfortable in consultation with my doctor and some other folks that we're going to be able to manage this.
And these people have been doing it, the organizers have been doing it for quite some time.
I think the organizer, the guy who's our lead of the trek, has summited Kilimanjaro 160 times.
Oh, okay.
Can you imagine?
No, I can't imagine. I can't imagine doing it once.
I cannot yet either. I am trying to imagine it. Yeah. So, but I think particularly this time of year in New England, it's so beautiful out that it really is a pleasure to be outside more as well.
Yeah. And having the, you giving yourself the time and everything to be able to do that. Very jealous of that. And what will the weather be like when, again, I've never been to Tanzania either, so I have no clue.
Yeah.
What conditions would you be expecting?
So the nice part about Kilimanjaro is it's the tallest peak in Africa, but it is very close to the equator. So there will be some ice and snow at the very top. It'll be around 45 degrees at the summit. At the highs, and the lows will be in like the 20s, I think. But it's not like going to Everest or something like that. You don't need technical like snow climbing gear and things like that.
Okay.
Which is, if I needed that, I wouldn't have done it. Honestly, that would have been one step too far. I am very adventurous, which is consistent with the fact that I like to start companies and things like that. I have a pretty high risk tolerance, but I think that would have been the last.
That would have been too much.
Yeah,
okay, boom, I'm out.
One beyond where I'm interested in going.
You did mention it, just to catch it again. It's for a cancer charity,
yes.
Right?
So Damon Runyon Cancer Research Foundation is an organization that was actually, Damon Runyon, I think, was a sportscaster, but they have been focused on exclusively funding early career scientists who are doing cancer research. And it's super important right now, given the cuts to NIH and other constraints that early career scientists have. It's always been hard for them to get NIH funding early in their careers. So this is an important space. But also, having worked with really gifted academics and researchers, the sort of biggest step function changes we see in innovation is often from not recognizing that something's not possible. And so I have a real desire to support those early stage scientists, partially because of this critical funding gap that they have traditionally, but then that's even more so today. So they fund across all types of cancer, people who are doing really, really bold work.
Great. Okay. And you've got a fundraising page, so we can put that up as part of the podcast and look to get some support. Now, so you're going to be doing this with a life science leader.
If you support me, I will write. I write an update. So
okay.
I will be sending updates to people along the way as we train, and you get all of my thoughts about that I mull over in the woods. So
anybody who wants to know what Theresa's going to be up to, then just stick some money in the coffers for that. And while you're doing this, I imagine that there'd be some kind of interlope between what your next big adventure after this is going to be. I mean, I don't walk very far very often, but when I do, I find it's a real kind of for thinking and planning, and I can really kind of do that. Do you see that this opportunity as that, as well as being surrounded by these other incredible people in the life sciences space?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the people on the team. I know one of them pretty well because she was a Tremere fellow with me. She's going to be my roommate in Kilimanjaro. And so getting the opportunity to know her better, and then the caliber of the people that are typically go on these climbs, they're very interesting. They're interested, and I think it's going to be great fun. In terms of how it relates to what I'm doing next, I do get to spend a lot of time thinking, and I do think that I don't hike with headphones or anything. So I'm either thinking about nature, or I'm thinking about, okay, I heard about this idea. How does this relate to that? And just getting a lot of uninterrupted time to kind of connect the dots in non-obvious ways. And so, sort of see what I'm reacting to versus not. I was actually just on a call with a young female entrepreneur who was asking, when you're looking at multiple opportunities, how do you pick which one? And I said, well, in the early days, I was like, it's what do I go back to? So if somebody's presented me with an idea or an opportunity or a problem, like if I keep going back to it and thinking about it, then I know I'm drawn to it. And if I don't, then obviously I'm not. And then, so that's very intuitive and kind of holistic and emotional. And it's hard to be very, I guess, like analytical about it for me. Yeah. But then there's an analytical phase where it's like, okay, so I like this thing or these people, which is also always for me a combination of those two. And if I can't get it out of my head, now it's time to think about how I'm going to, how do I kill it?
How can I make this work?
Well, no, it's actually, if I knew, what are the three things, if I knew them now, rather than 6 months from now, if I knew them now, we wouldn't do the company.
Okay.
So it's a company killer list, which is, how do you convince yourself something's worth doing? It's because, like, what are the three things, if you knew them, you knew it wouldn't be worth doing? And trying to see if you can find answers to those as quickly and cheaply as possible.
Okay. I've never looked at it in that way. Is that your kind of life philosophy, is how you look at things?
I mean, the first part where it's like I go where I'm drawn is very much it. And then I think I only today articulated this other piece, but it's very much part of what I do is like trying to find the highly leveraged question that sometimes in biotech and science, part of what I bring is I'm really into the so what and not as into the how. And so if something is going to have a lot of impact on people, then I can get really excited about it. But sometimes like changes that an expert might think are meaningful because they're statistically significant actually aren't going to change the outcome for anyone. So that's what drives me. But then what I've learned is that I will get excited about lots of things and I'm drawn to lots of things. And so you can only really do one thing at a time very well. And so I think that I have to use this more analytical approach where I have to start figuring out which of them is really worth spending time on. So it's a two-phased approach, but the one that, comes most naturally to me is just to be like, do I like it? Do I not like it? Does it make sense? Like, do I like them or not? And I think the next part also comes naturally, but it's not, I have to be more disciplined about doing it.
And is that about like having fun? Do you think when you look at something and think, oh, that's going to be fun, or is it more about what the end result's going to look like?
Both. I think I have a friend who is a science fiction author, and she wrote a blog post years ago that really resonated with me as an entrepreneur. And it's called The Path of Most Fun. And she was talking about writing a play or a book. And she said, I was trying to make it into this thing, and I was doing all this, like I was making all these choices for my characters. And then I was like, you know what? I'm scrapping this and I'm just going to do what's most fun. And so she wrote this, she was like, and it became more and more absurd, but it was so fun. And then I realized my best work is always the path of most fun. And I think that post, her name's Monica Byrne. You should buy all of her books. But that post really resonated for me as an entrepreneur because I realized that, it's hard work. So you might as well have fun while you're doing it. And my definition of fun is different than other, some people's. Like, I like building things. I like figuring things out. I like taking risks and learning. I'm super curious about the world. So those things are fun for me and I'm happy to do them, but I also can never do them if it doesn't have a human impact. So mission really matters, but yeah, fun, it does. When it's fun, it's so easy.
Yeah. There's no point in having fun if the end result isn't going to be there. So you have to have the kind of
I think if it was just fun, like if I was like making cookies all day or whatever, which is very fun. That would be, I wouldn't have the same commitment when things get hard because things always get hard.
Yes. Yeah. That's being able to keep going when it's tough. So I imagine this trip's going to be, would I be fair in saying this is going to be fun to climb Mount Kilimanjaro with all of the other parts in it? It sounds like it's going to be fun.
I think so. I think it'll definitely be a big adventure. When I climbed Mount Monadnock in New Hampshire yesterday, and these two guys passed me while I was taking a break, and one of them said, well, this used to be type 1 fun and now it's type 2 fun. And I assume, I'm not totally sure of the definitions of type 1 and type 2 fun, but I'm pretty sure type 2 fun is the accomplishment you feel when you've done the thing. So it's fun in retrospect as opposed to fun in the moment. He was like, it was type 1 fun for a while, but we had just been kind of like effectively climbing scrambling up a granite face, and it was getting really difficult. So that resonated. So it will be both type 1 and type 2 fun.
Because the achievement at the end of the day is just going to be
of course,
mind-blowing, right? It's just going to be like, oh my God, I did that. That's incredible. So what about when you come back down from the mountain? What are your future plans? Is there anything that you've got in the pipeline that you can tell us about?
Nothing that I can tell you about yet, but I am actively talking to people, thinking about really two different paths. One is, company formation, which, frankly, I'm pretty strongly drawn to. And then also I'm helping grow existing businesses, which is what I did at Everlywell. So I didn't found that company. I was, one of probably like employee 10 or so, but helped grow it very, very effectively. But it was, it was obviously a very early stage startup then. So those two places are places that I play nicely and get excited. And so now it's just which of those am I most drawn to, and then which of them is, seems like the most, both where I can make the biggest biggest impact for being there. Like, do they need me?
Yeah.
And what will have, sort of most best survive the analytical approach, right? Of saying, can this company really be something? And does the opportunity, is it big enough to be really exciting?
Excellent. Well, whatever it is, I'm sure it's going to be amazing. A lot of our audience, what's growing in terms of our audience, are students, those who are currently studying STEM, bioscience in some shape or form. It's a challenging time for them, and a number of them have spoken to me about, what does the future look like? We don't really know. We can't see it. What would your advice be to those people in what's coming up for the future?
Well, I would say for my fellow English and political science majors, you have a role to play in this industry, so don't let anyone tell you otherwise. For people who are training in science today, I totally understand that trepidation. I think it's been a tough couple of years, both because the market's been slow and then funding, government level funding cuts, et cetera. We haven't solved all the world's problems. And the problems that people in biotech work on are really affect the health and well-being of people. And that hasn't gone away, which means there's plenty of room and plenty of future in this industry. It's like, we haven't cured cancer. We haven't figured out diabetes yet. There are so many things left to conquer. And once we conquer those, something new will pop up, right? I think that, I think there's reasons to be hopeful. I think at a global level, and there's still very much a need for bench scientists. I think, AI, there's this concept of sort of the virtual AI scientist that is going to replace everyone with robots and whatever. I think we're a long way from that. As someone who, loves to be an early adopter of technology and approaches, I think we're a long way from that. I think that there are things that people do and will continue to do for a long time that are going to be tough to replace. So I would say don't lose heart, but, try to build your network as best as you can, and get really clear on what it is you want to do. What I've seen that is really challenging is someone has gone into sciences because that's what their parents expected, or maybe that's what they were good at, but it's not actually what lights them up. And that's something that you want to, particularly if you're in school or grad school, that you really want to think about, because that's the only place people really struggle is if they ended up in a field that they weren't excited about. Now, luckily, all of that training can be used in other functions. So you can move lots of different directions, particularly if you have technical training, you can. So,
it's explore, isn't it?
Yeah,
really.
It's like,
but don't pin yourself down into.
Yeah. I mean, I know so many CEOs of biotech companies who say, yeah, I was on the bench and then I realized I didn't like it because I'm too extroverted. So, I mean, just really take stock of who you are and what makes you happy and what you like doing, and then try to find a job that lets you do more of that. I mean, that's honestly what a lot of what I've done in my career is like, I like this part of the job. How do I get to do more of that and less of these other things I don't enjoy?
What was the best career risk that you took?
Oh, Everlywell, hands down.
Why?
That was, people thought I was nuts. They're like, the company's based in Austin, Texas, and it does what exactly? But I remember the company was raising money, and I had a couple friends that I was like, you should really invest in this company. And they're like, I can't get there. And then 2 or 3 years later, I remember when you told me to put money, and I'm like, but it was great. And it was great because I got to architect new, sort of deal types, business models. I mean, I never thought that as someone in biotech that I would work for a company that was on Shark Tank of all things, which was made me really nervous at the time, because I was at the company before Shark Tank, and I was so like worried about how's this going to play. But I mean, Julia Cheek is a visionary. She's a visionary. So she was like, this is how it has to be. But it was really, really fun to be on a meteoric rise, rocket ship type company.
Right.
But also really interesting. I mean, one, I felt like I had a tremendous amount to offer that team and that role as chief business officer there, which was really gratifying. But also I got to do all sorts of things that I would have never thought I would do, like get products into, Target and CVS and work on Amazon distribution. So it really broadened my vantage point and gave me a real appreciation for most of the team in the kind of 2015, 2019 timeframe was really young. And so I was one of the oldest people in the company, and I got to work with really, really amazing recent grads. And I think it has made me immune to some of the sort of generational complaints that people like to harp on. I'm like, no, I mean, I love Gen Z. I'm like, they're great.
They're my people.
I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about consumer health and other businesses, and I think I've been able to use in interesting and new ways. And I mean, it was an amazing ride.
So the takeaway from that is that if you're on a path, the path can have all different areas and enjoy the ride while you're on that path.
Well, if you're drawn to something, I think in that case, it was an incredibly compelling founder, a way to use my skills where I would be one of the few people in the company, like with my kind of background. And that was really, really valuable to them. And I really believed and continue to believe that providing patients with more convenient access to their health information, in this case through diagnostics, is fundamental to improving outcomes for people. And I have not lost that belief. I don't work there anymore, but I use the products, and I really, really believe in the mission that has now been going for a decade. So that's something that if you can find opportunities like that, where you can make a unique contribution and do something that you really feel is going to be important, I mean, you got to go for those.
Got to go for that. Yeah. So looking outside of the box.
Yes, for sure.
Helps. Well, listen, Theresa, thank you for joining us today. Probably want to get back out and do some more training, do you?
I can barely move today, Sharron, but maybe tomorrow. Today I'm taking the day off.
Excellent. Good job to do. Yeah. And one of the exciting things is the majority of women that you're doing this climb with, right?
Yeah, apparently this is the first time that the Timmerman Traverse has been majority women. It's just kind of a cool thing. I think about 8 years in, and the women are powerhouses too. I think the top 3 fundraisers so far are all women. It's not me yet, but they are really, really kicking butt.
Well, we'll do our best to get you up the leader ladder with them. We'll get posting. But I would imagine being with these women, being on this experience will create all sorts of collaborations, opportunities, and maybe with 1 or 2 of your co-walkers, you'll come back and tell us about it.
Oh yeah, I would love that. I'd be honored.
Yeah, that would be great. So I wish you every success. I'll be keeping an eye on it because I'll be getting your updates, and I look forward to hearing the story when you come back of how it was, because I think it will be really inspirational to other people as well.
Yeah, wonderful. I'd be delighted. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolute pleasure. Go enjoy the rest of the day. Relax for today, and then back at it tomorrow.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. Take good care, Theresa. Bye-bye. Well, that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. She Leads Biotech is brought to you by CNA International USA, a woman-owned boutique search firm based in New York. If you're looking to hire talent for your company or want support in achieving your career goals, please reach out to me at contact@cnaint.com. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. And remember, the success of every woman should be an inspiration to another. So don't be afraid to share yours. Thanks again for listening. Until next time.